All right. Hello. A very good evening to you, to everyone who is joining us on this XENO Conversations webinars, where we have chats about money and about things to help us have better futures. All right. My name is David. I am David Ogutu. I am the marketing lead at XENO, and I'm really excited to be here. Not just from the marketing angle of things, but also because I happen to be a parent, and school fees is a thing that for some reason, every single term that comes around, for a lot of us, it catches us as a surprise. Yeah, it's like we did not know that expense was coming, and we're always either borrowing from somewhere or just basically not ready for what's coming. And so this conversation today is about saying, look, how can we better prepare ourselves for this inevitable cost? Maybe you have children, maybe you are spending, paying fees for a sibling or a relative because black tax demands it, or maybe you yourself are just saying, look, I need to go back to school, right? And you're trying to figure out how best to do that. And I am flanked by some very, very great people. Sharon Tumushabe, who is the VP advisory here at XENO, and I'm going to be giving her an opportunity to introduce herself a bit later. But I will start with John Ntende, aka the money engineer, right? I've always found the title very exciting. So John, hello and welcome to XENO Conversations.
Thank you, David. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm glad to be on this call to share some of my experiences and also to interact with the audience at XENO.
Yeah, all right, so John. So just tell me a bit really quickly where this money engineer thing comes from, right? How did you get there?
Oh yeah, so I did civil engineering back at Makerere, but I didn't get to practice. Uganda, jobs being scarce. So after Makerere, there are some guys who came to Makerere, they were recruiting accountants. So I just dived into that bandwagon and I joined Deloitte, where I ended up doing finance. So the money engineer is a combination of the engineering and the finance. So along the way, you get a job, you get into debt, you have a family, you struggle with money. So I started blogging on Facebook about some of those issues I was going through.
Yep.
And eventually I decided to make it a side hustle. So it's a side hustle I do. It's basically advising people about money, about the financial products out there. And really, I do what I call financial experiments, and then I share them with people, including XENO. XENO was an experiment. I saw it somewhere. I'm like, what is this XENO thing? I need to figure it out. So I went through the process of opening the account and figuring it out, and I started blogging about XENO, what it does, and how I'm using it. So that's why I'm here with you, David, today.
All right. Thank you very much for taking the time. So, I mean, evidently you are a do as I do engineer, money person. We have a lot of people who give advice and write books, and then, you hear a few years down the road that, things did not go as they said they would in their blogs and their advice. But also joined by Sharon Tumushabe, who is as I said earlier, the VP advisory. I think, Sharon, welcome. This is not, your first rodeo here on this call, so you're in good company. But just tell us a bit about yourself, but also what you do as the VP advisor at XENO.
Thank you, David. You have taken my seat. I usually sit where you are moderating, but yes, I'm excited to be here. My name is Sharon Tumushabe. The Vice President Advisory at XENO. I've been doing advisory for the last 10 years. I help people like you on this call, individuals, institutions, to plan, save, and invest. And I love doing my work. I love engaging with people, and I've loved my journey at XENO. It has given us the platform to reach over 50,000. We're yet hitting 60,000. People we are helping to plan, save, and invest. So on a daily basis, I help people come up with plans on how to manage their finances, how they plan for future goals, And with XENO, we've managed to automate this. So via myxeno.com, you're able to go ahead and come up with a plan. And with as little as 10,000, you're able to start investing and becoming financially independent in the future. And I'm excited to be on this call today, David. A little bit about me. I've been with XENO for the last 6 years, ever since XENO started. And this year marks our 6th year. And us highlighting education is very important because majority of the clients that we talk to have children. So I'm very happy that we are highlighting this very sensitive topic that everybody is out there wanting to get solutions for. So I'm excited, David.
All right, it's really nice to have you, especially on the other side, you know, where all your expertise can be put to good use. Now, like, here's before we get into this conversation, of course, there's some things to just, you know, lay the playing field. I don't know if you read the papers, but there were some staggering statistics that came out, right? 49% of working Ugandans earn less than 150,000 shillings. And then 1% earn at least 1 million shillings and above. So, you know, everyone, a huge majority seems to be somewhere between, you know, the 400, 500 to 1 million shilling mark. But in contrast, when you look at what the fees is like, and everyone will know, even post-pandemic, the fees went up by a bit, you know, after the pandemic, because, you know, schools hadn't worked, they had gotten themselves into debts that they had to clear and things like that. And so, you know, this burden has been passed down to the parents, right? And school is becoming more and more expensive. Now, of course, warn to you, if you're out there and, you know, you're trying to push, you know, for better than average, you know, for your child. So you're trying to take them to the best schools. You have the hope somewhere of taking them to, you know, Cambridge or Harvard, all these things. And, you know, if you look at the, you know, cost centers for those things, they're a bit high, right? So with this scenario, right, with the income that Ugandans are making, not keeping up with how school fees are rising, you know, there's a serious challenge to parents, and there's a requirement maybe for some thought and some more planning. So for me, the question is, just to start, right, should we just give up and be like, you know what, this thing too expensive? Yeah, you will go to Natural Blue Primary and just be fine. And I'm not saying it's a bad school. I'm just saying that, you know, their government has made sure that certain education options are affordable, but also that does seem to come with its own challenges. So is it bleak for parents wanting to offer quality education for their children? Or is there a possible way to be able to manage this effectively? And maybe we shall just start with John.
Thank you, David. You've definitely painted a very their picture. Now, whether we should give up, just to tell you a little story. My father was an engineer. He passed away when I was in senior 1, and my mom is a primary school teacher. So with her little meager earnings, she managed to educate 5 kids, and all of us graduated from various institutions of learning. So if a primary school teacher can pull it off, I believe us who are even a bit more privileged with better exposure, I think it's definitely possible. So true, the cost of education has gone up, but there's also that famous quote that if you think education is expensive, then you try
ignorance.
So yes, the picture is quite there. Actually, before I came onto this call, I was trying to calculate the lifetime cost, and I came up with a simple rule of thumb. So you take your school fees you pay per child per term, then you just multiply that figure by around 50 for a decent school, which is paying around 1.5 million. And when you do that, you realize that over a lifetime, you need about anywhere between 50 to 100 million per child. So 100 million per child to graduate.
Okay.
So If
That
you
should
have
be put
two
on
kids,
family
you need
planning
200
posters.
million. If you have 5 kids, you need 500 million shillings. So
Yes.
yes, and I think we shall go into the planning stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the situation is there. And as we continue the conversation, we shall
But
look at options.
there are ways to manage
Yes.
this situation.
Yeah, there are ways to manage it, and we shall get into it. It's really about planning, trying to fit within your means. And at some point, I'll talk about other alternative forms of education, because what is education? Education comes from the word educe, which is to draw from within. And there are many ways you can draw talent and gifting from a child without necessarily burdening yourself with very exorbitant fees. But
All right.
that is something we shall get into.
Well, thank you for that. So, Sharon, I'd just like to get to you in a bit. You help lots of people, figure out their way through life financially, but you're also a mother, right? And you use your own advice, I assume. So the question would be, again, the situation, there's a cost of living and how much people are earning. Is there a way for parents to be able to maneuver this situation effectively, or are we just in your experience?
Well, thank you so much, David. So as a parent, it still has to come down to when we give birth to these children, they are our responsibility. We want to give them quality education just as much as we give them quality healthcare. And when we say quality, it doesn't have to mean it has to be expensive. Quality means they are able to read and write and go through life. Personally, I went to a UPE school, Victoria Nile. David, I know you're my OB.
Yeah.
So Victoria Nile, I think I remember my mom used to pay 12,000 shillings for school fees. And I think food was like 10,000. But gone are those days where UPE has the quality that you would want your child to have. So for now, what I really do personally is to first understand, how much am I earning? So it gets down to the budgeting. How much are you earning? And how much is school going to cost you per term? So if you have 2 children like I do, you need to also try and weigh, every 3 months, you're very sure school fees is going to be knocking on your door. So are you the type that is going to wait and pay all that, let's say, millions of shillings at a lump sum, at a go for 2 children? So it's better to break it down into small pieces that will not make it so heavy on you, that it won't make it so difficult for you to actually take these children to school. So right now, I know holidays is tomorrow. Some are breaking off tomorrow, Friday. Others are breaking off over the weekend. Maybe others are breaking off next week. So within these other 3 weeks, as a mother, as a parent, it's not going to just be like it's a surprise to you. So we need to plan. So we know school fees is coming, second term is here. So what I basically do is I put little monies away on a monthly basis, so that by the time 3 months down the road come, it's not going to be a heavy load. And remember, it's not just school fees you're planning for. Some of us have kids in boarding school. So you're going to find that whatever price you need, an X amount that you need for school fees, you need to have close to 30% on top of the school fees to take care of the requirements. And requirements are not just what the child needs to use at school, but you're going to find things like talent class, swimming, all these things are extras that come on top of the school fees. And to me, I feel that for parents to really nail down this issue, we need to plan and we need to start small. So you don't have to wait until the last month and then you're footing 3 million for 2 children at the same time. Start small. If it's now that you've paid the school fees, before the term ends, every end of month, don't celebrate and say kids are at school, so it's my time to enjoy. Put that money aside, no matter how small it is. By the end of those 3 months, you're able to actually have at least 80% of the school. And then the other thing that you can do as a parent, you don't have to pay the entire lump sum at a go. You can actually negotiate with these schools, the schools that can actually allow you to pay 50% at the beginning of the term, and then the next month you're able to complete. So you don't have to have a lot of money to be able, and you don't have to always run to loans all the time. to be able to educate your child. Because at the end of the day, if you're running out of a loan, the first question should be why? Is the school affordable? So it also goes down to how much is it costing you to take this child to school? And are you able to sustain and pay for that particular school you've chosen?
All right. Sorry about that. There's some serious nuggets for us to think about there, but there's going to be a poll that's going to be put in the chat, and would really just like you to just give us your feedback. Right? We'd like to know from you, how do you typically afford to pay your school fees? Right? You pay as you earn, so yeah. When the school term reaches, you put the money there, close your eyes. Eat once, stuff once. Or do you have an education fund or policy that caters specifically to your children's school fees? Do you go for an overnight the week before fees? And yeah, the Lord provides. It's always a miracle. You don't know how it happens, but somehow it does. Or are you that person who is unfortunately in debt over fees? We'd like to know from you. So just please drop in the poll. The polls are anonymous, so no one is going to know your answers. We'll just be able to know, the tabulation of how the majority of you on the call do pay your fees. And also, if you have any questions as the conversation unfolds for our hosts, for our panelists, you can ask me questions. I'm just here to ask them. So, for the panelists, please drop the questions in the Q&A in the comments section, and we'll be able to ask them a bit later on. But Sharon and John, you've both spoken extensively about planning, right? It seems to be the foundation, for us to be able to give our children a quality education, right? So, but it can be ambiguous. So, and I know you touched on it, Sharon. So I'd like to switch to John a bit. He has done the math of you need, X amount of money to get your child through school over a lifetime, and maybe that's where financial planning starts for your child. But what factors should a person take into account when they're just trying to put together this plan for education for their child, and putting into account that some of us don't have the plan, but the children are there and we have to cater to them now, but we also have to cater to where they're going to be going in the future. And I'll just start with John, and then I'll get to you, Sharon, from an advisory perspective.
Thank you, David. Actually, I also went to Victoria Nile School in Ginger, so I think this is an OB meetup. It was a very good school back then. But back to the planning. So the idea, the way I think about it is, first, it begins with the vision for your child. You try to envision from your observation, where do you think this child, what are her gifts, what are her strengths, and what kind of possible career path would you wish them to have? I have 3 daughters now. I'm already envisioning what kind of career path. I know there's a school of thought which says you shouldn't really direct the career path of the child. They should just go along. But I think in our environment, our economy, you have to be really deliberate, because you may pursue something which is nice, which feels good, but then you're not employable at the end of the day. So the idea is to try and envision what kind of career path this child will have. And then from that, you try and map out what kind of schooling, what kind of education will they have, right from a kindergarten. Because typically now we're doing 3 years of kindergarten. Then if you're doing the traditional public system, you're doing 7 years of primary. Then you're doing 6 years of secondary. And you're doing 3 or 4 years of a typical bachelor's. So that is just the baseline. So you can start with that as a baseline. And you can use average costs, which you're looking at. And I like the XENO Planner tool. It really makes it easy. It asks you the age of your child. I know Sharon will talk about this. What kind of school. There's a time I was trying to plan for someone who actually using the XENO tool. So he said he wants his child to go to Harvard. So I Googled a law degree at Harvard, and we came up with a very big number. So he put that number in the XENO tool, and he was required to save like 10 million per month. So he first gave up on that he first gave up on that ambition, and we scaled it down to a degree course at Makerere, and we saw that the figures came to about 500,000 per month, which immediately onboarded and started paying up. So you look at the lifetime, the basic plan. The basic is just a simple degree, and then you work out those baseline costs to get the quantum you'll need. And as I say, the simple rule of thumb for an average middle-class school is anywhere between 50 to 100 million over a lifetime. But then there's also alternative education, which I'll expound later. Like, for instance, my 8-year child, I've already enrolled them in an online coding school, which is based in India, to complement the education, the public education, because she's in a normal private school. But I realized if you look at the trends, if you look at the job reports, if you look at the trends in technology, I think there are issues in the current curriculum. So as a parent, you need to find ways to supplement that basic education. So you plan for the basic, and then you find ways of supplementing through homeschooling, through online school, through holiday programs, and also some home education packages. So those are some of the factors. But I think a good education plan should be customized to the child, to the interests of the child, and what is available in the market. So those are some of the things I would look at when building a plan. David, I think you're muted.
All right. Sorry about that. You're just throwing more costs in the works with, additional online education. We're still trying to sort out these basics, John. But Sharon, what factors should someone take into account? I think you mentioned the kind of school that your children go to and being able to afford that. But what other things should someone take into account when they are trying to plan for their child's education?
Okay, so the planning will start from what level is, the planning will start from what level of education this child is at. So for example, if the child is in kindergarten, it's good to actually start planning now, because we use our current income to be able to plan for all those other future incomes, future goals that we are going to have, like educating a child. So if the child is in kindergarten, you have to start from the basics. How old is this child and at what level are they now? So if it's kindergarten, then the second question is going to be, how much is it costing? Which school are they going to? So you need to factor in how much the school is going to cost. And lately you see that kindergarten is more expensive than primary and secondary education. And maybe it's because the foundation has to be good, the foundation has to be good to really have a better grounding for your child to really excel and find education much more easier later. Maybe you can argue it that way. So depending on what level, how much it's costing you, and then you need to plan for the terms. How many terms are there in a year? So if there are 3 terms, then you need to know, okay, how long is it going to take me to educate this child in nursery? So let's say 3 years. So 3 years, you need to multiply the cost of education per term for the year, which is 3, okay? And then you have to now factor in the 3 years. Now here we're just talking about kindergarten. You need to start planning for primary. And how long does it take for someone to be in a primary school? In Uganda, it's 7 years. So you need to also work that math and know that, okay, it's going to take me another 7 years to educate this child through primary school. And then there's secondary school, which is another 6 years. Then we have university. So all these things should not happen to us as a surprise, simply because we know these children are here. They have to go through this. So knowing the level at which they are, you need to factor in other expenses. Like I said earlier, it's not just school fees that we are planning for. You need to plan for the extras that come that the child will need as they're going to school. So that's another 30%. Now, once you have calculated and known how much.
So that is 30% of the total income?
No, not the total income. I was talking about 30% of your school fees. So if school fees is, let's say, 1 million shillings, you need an extra 300 to buy the other basic needs the child needs. So you don't need just 1 million shillings, but you need 1.3 million, and the 300 is taking care of the shopping.
So a good figure for those extras is 30% of whatever.
At least 30%. At least 30%. Yeah, at least 30% of the school fees. And then once you've calculated that, you need to know, okay, so I need this X amount of money. then work backwards to see how much can I put away now so that 3 years down the road, when my child is done with kindergarten, I am ready for primary school. So the planning, knowing the cost, knowing the level at which the child is, knowing your current income now, because you might find yourself that the child is going to a school that is maybe 2 times your salary. And then that means you'll have to break it down in small bits. And then what happens to the other needs? So it's also very good for parents to plan for schools that are within their means. Within their means, it means that you're able to afford education without breaking a lot of yourself and depriving yourself with the other needs that need money from you. So education is not the only thing that the child needs. I like what John mentioned. We need to actually invest in talent as well, because there are schools that give bursaries as well. Did you know, David? So if your child is a very good swimmer, maybe you can invest a bit of money in talent as well so that they can get bursaries and they're able to offset that, maybe a bursary, and then you just have to do a top up. So it's not just about us injecting in the school fees. It's also us developing these children's talents. And lately there's so much out there that kids can actually earn money from. So it can be a talent you can develop. It can be a bursary that this child can get. If you can't do that as a parent, then it means you need to foot 100% the school fees, and you have to plan for it. Plan, put money aside, and once the school comes, be ready and don't be too surprised. It's the planning, it's saving now for tomorrow.
So you speak about planning, but inflation happens, price changes. So I have put my 1 million, my 300,000 shillings. How do I plan for those changes? For example, I had my policy and then COVID, school fees jumps by 20, 30%, and then that throws you off balance. So how do you plan to accommodate those changes in fees?
Thank you. So away from the planning alone is not enough. Saving alone is not enough. Even if you saved 1 million shillings every month or every other 3 months and you're just saving, it's not good enough. The only way you move money through time, if you want to pay school fees next year, the best way to move that money until next year is through investment. So put that 500, that 200,000 away in a place that can grow and multiply. So that by the time it's next year, you're not just having 1 million shillings. You have 1 million shillings plus the return that has been on that investment. So as we are planning for education, we're not just saying plan, budget, save. The end goal is invest those savings so that by the time next year comes, you're not worried about inflation. Inflation is a punishment to savers. You save money in a box, inflation teaches you a very good lesson that you should have invested this money. So let's grow that money. It's not just saving it alone. Invest it, and by the time it's next year, your money has grown above inflation. By the time schools are hiking prices, I've not seen a school that reduces school fees that says this term is 500, next time we are reducing to 400. It's usually 500 and next time is 600. Where does the 100,000 come from? If you've been investing your money over a period of time, you're going to have slightly more than what you had invested. So if you've put in 500 for next term and it's, let's say, a month away, it's not just 500. By the time a month comes later, this 500 has grown to a certain amount. If you're planning for the next 3 years, there's this compounding effect that happens every time you invest your money. This money keeps growing, it keeps multiplying. You find that if you've invested your 1 million shillings at the end of the year, you have a return of close to 120,000, which can now maybe go into things like shopping, So for inflation, how you beat it, if you're planning for education, you have to invest your money, let this money grow above the inflation rate so that you move it through time. By next year, 2 years down the road, this money has grown by a certain margin.
All right. So we're going to display the results from our Q&A, from our poll, from earlier. But also a bit later on, we'll be asking your questions. So feel free to drop them in, the Q&A section. I see a couple of people have asked questions already. And we shall get to those in just a bit. But 65% of you said, you pay as you earn. 12% says it's always a miracle. the second highest. 9% said that they have an education fund or policy that caters to school fees specifically. And 7% are in debt, and another 7% actually do not know. Now, just to do a quick recap, if you just joined us, Sharon and Mr. Ntende have shared some very, very, pertinent things, especially if you're out there and you're a parent and you're planning for this, or maybe you're just planning for yourself, to get into a higher level of education. I mean, know how much money, school is going to cost you over the period of time that you're going to be paying for it. Add 30% for the needs that come with school. Don't be at campus and you can't print, and then you're asking other people for, printing money. But also, always account for how that money is going to lose value over time, because inflation does happen. It's a reality that we live with. And, the best way to do this is investment, right? Just have your money work a bit for you to make sure that it battles that inflation. But just going back to John, they might be someone on the call who says, okay, fine, I've heard what you've said, right? But I have short-term needs now of fees that need to be paid, but I also have long-term needs of where I want my child to go. How do I manage this dual thing that's going to be happening, my short-term and my long-term needs? And, what advice would you give that person? How can they start setting up a more secure, planned education for their child? John.
Okay, thank you, David. So Sharon has mentioned how to compute the basic level of course you'll need. So if you're using the traditional system, the 3 terms, let's say we're using 1 million. Please don't get scared if 1 million is too much. This is just for discussion. Then you add on that 30%, so you have that 1.3. Let's say you have 1 child, so over a term, you need about 3.9. I hope my mathematics is correct. So that 3.9 now you spread it, let's say, over 12 months. So 3.9 divided by 12. David, you went to Victoria. What is the answer? So now that is the minimum amount you need to fund. So the idea behind this is that once you know that amount, then ideally you want to create an education, some kind of fund for education. It could be a simple savings account. It could be something called a unit trust. But basically you create a fund and then you keep depositing this money regularly on a monthly basis, hopefully. And you create a fund which also takes care of the inflation cost. So you're using a fund which also grows in time. It is invested somewhere, and we shall talk about where you can invest it. But XENO has such a product. For instance, I have 3 kids. My youngest is 4-month-old. So the moment she was born, I immediately went to XENO and created an account for her. So I have 3 accounts with XENO, each in each child's name. So I deposit some little money every month to those individual accounts. And XENO has also an interesting feature. I've locked withdrawals, because one of the problems I have is I always find a way to withdraw this money. So I locked withdraw until campus. So, and the money is little, by the way. It's as little as 10K. So, but the point is that you've created a fund, then you find a way of depositing into that fund on a regular basis. Now, the idea is that you try and not withdraw from that fund. So that fund, you try and leave it for the long term, secondary and campus. So that over the years, it accumulates. Then for the current, I know many of us, I saw the poll, many of us pay from current income. You can continue, especially if you have a job, you can continue to use the current income to pay the bills, and then use this education fund to fund the long term. But ideally, the idea is that you need to find a school or a plan which fits within your means. There's no point in going to an international school when you're struggling to pay rent. You will really be very stressed. And one other point of planning, before you have all these many kids, I've told you, each kid is 50 to 100 million. So think through it before you have a child. There's a nice book called Poverty Proof by a guy called Douglas Kruger. There's a study which was done in South Africa, and there's a direct correlation between poverty and unwed childbearing. So try as much as possible. There's a direct correlation, and it sounds unfair, but if you have many children before you're ready, trust me, the odds that you'll struggle throughout life are very high. So it comes from the point of the kids you're bringing into this world. I know children are a blessing, but in multitudes, they can become a big burden. So that's what I can say for now. I think I can chip in later and see where to invest and things like that.
So clearly you're an Ntende who doesn't believe that I think the Baganda said riziki. You know, just give birth.
Those things were
the child will come
Victoria, when the fees was 15,000.
Yeah.
Now you need 1 million plus. So really.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, quick math for the amount of money you say. Yeah, I had to go and not disappoint. You need to save 325,000 shillings a month if your child is paying. You say it was 3.9 over 3 terms. Yeah, and when you look at it like that, it seems like a manageable figure for a lot of people to be able to take their child to a school of that quality. But I'll just go to Sharon just to sort of touch on this a little bit before we move on from this. For someone who is trying to handle the short and the long term, how do they maneuver the current needs and the future needs, and how you advise them as an advisor, but also from an advisor at XENO, what does XENO offer as a product that can help people take care of their children's education or their own education or the education of their siblings?
Okay, so at XENO, what's happening is that we help you come up with a plan for your child by first helping you understand how much it's going to cost you for this education for this particular child, depending on which level of education they're at, how much it's costing. We will help you work backwards to show you what you can do on a monthly basis. So we break it down for you, not to wait until it's a huge amount that you're looking for, but then here we break it down and it's very flexible. The other thing that we do here for parents that have children is that you don't have to wait for 5 years, 10 years to access your educational fund. We invest using unit trust funds, and these are licensed and regulated by the Capital Markets Authority. So here you know that at least your money is safe. So we invest in things like treasury bills, bonds. We mix for you different assets, what we call a portfolio. So we go ahead and invest the money that you give to XENO on a regular basis. With us, you can invest daily, weekly, monthly, depending on how your earning is. How you earn is how you decide to invest. Our minimum investment is 10,000. So there's no reason as to why you would say, I can't afford to save for my child's education. It's very expensive, because in case you're going maybe for a different product elsewhere, you could find probably the minimums are a bit high. But here at XENO, its minimum is 10,000. And for an educational fund, you can decide to have multiple goals. So you're able to have, if you have 3 children like John does, you have 2 goals. In my case, I have 2 goals. No, John should have 3, I should have 2, because my children are at different levels of education. The way I plan for Amy, who is in primary 6, is different from how I can plan for Eliana, who is in kindergarten. So the 2 have to have separate plans because their cost of education is different and they're different levels. So XENO takes into account that personalization. Each child is looked at independently, but there are parents that actually insist and say, I have 5 children, I want to have 1 fund. It's still fine, okay? But it may not give you the ultimate organization you need. The organization is plan for their education separately. If you were to seek advice from me, I would guide you to actually have multiple goals. If you have 2 children, have 2 different goals, unless they're at the same level of education and paying the same amount. You could find that someone is paying a different amount of money, so that means their plan is going to be a bit different. What's so special? What makes XENO a bit different from the rest of what is on the market? Flexibility. When school fees comes, you don't have to wait. You can actually initiate a withdrawal of that particular sum of money that you want to pay for school fees. And then you keep continuing on with investments. Some parents can do a lump sum. They say, okay, I have 50 million, I have 100 million, but this is an educational fund. I don't want to touch my money ever again. XENO, every 3 months, please pay out X amount so that I'm able to take care of my child's school fees. People like us who are salary earners who haven't yet made it in life to have so much in abundance, we're still saving up. We do it bit by bit on a monthly basis. You put your money aside. When school fees comes, you can access this money. So it's invested on a daily basis. You get your returns and yields on a daily basis. And then at the end of the day, should you have school fees for that particular term, you skip, use what you have. And then when you have shortage, when you don't have enough money to actually pay school fees, you get into your XENO account and top up. So it depends, the different clients that we help. And some are saying, I want to plan for university. It's 5 years, 10 years from now, depending at the level which the child is at. They don't want to be surprised. They know university is very expensive, especially those that are looking at international universities. If you don't start planning early, it becomes very difficult. And yet we can use the money we have today, put away small bits of money, because education is a consistent expense that comes to us every other 3 months. It's not going to go away. So the earlier we start, the better. You don't have to wait for future income to take care of it. Start now.
All right. And just don't forget that, well, first of all, we're going to be getting to your questions in just a bit. But these people are also available to talk to outside here. So I'm just going to, I'll give them a bit later on a chance to maybe share their LinkedIn or their Facebook or their Twitter, wherever it is that, you can engage them, with this. But also don't forget that these webinars that we do are monthly. So if you've subscribed, please make sure that you check your email every month. We'll be sending out what we'll be talking about, and we'll be having interesting conversations here. But you can also follow XENO on Twitter at XENO Uganda, Instagram XENO Investment, or you can connect with us on Facebook and LinkedIn. Or you can visit www.myxeno.com and book a one-on-one session with an advisor like Sharon, or a member of her team, to be able to take you all through this. Now, a couple of questions coming in here. Someone is asking, to invest for my 2 children, do I need to open separate accounts for each of their accounts, or each of their accounts can operate independently, domiciled within my account? So I think you touched on this, Sharon, really quickly, but can you just explain to us how it operates when you have 2 separate accounts, and how does that work within your single account? 2 separate goals. I think that's the right way to put it. 2 separate goals. So maybe you start with the goal-based investment model that we use at XENO, and why it's important, and then how we structure those different savings systems that someone can have for their children.
Okay, so basically what we do at XENO, since the children are minors, these accounts are held by their parents. So the parent starts by selecting a goal, which is an educational goal in this case. Once you select it, you can personalize it to the child's name. That's if you're going to have multiple goals. So in my case, I have Amy. I have a goal called Amy, and it's an educational goal. I have another one called Eliana. So I name the goals by their names. And then what happens is we ask you a bunch of questions, and these questions are to tailor make and personalize this particular investment goal that you have decided to set up as a customer. So you deposit for them independently. They have a unique identifier code or an account number. So every time you're making an investment, you can even decide under settings to go ahead and give us an allocation, distribution allocation instruction that says every time I deposit 100,000, 70-30, 50-50, to these goals, you're able to actually give us a distribution instruction. So every time we receive money, you don't have to credit each one of them independently. We go by that allocation. So there are parents that say, okay, I'm not only saving for these children, I'm also working for myself, you know? So you can choose to have, let's say, a build wealth goal, and you have 2 different educational goals. Those are 3. You can choose to fund them independently on a monthly basis. You can set up autosave using MTN, because with MTN, you're able to do monthly, weekly, or daily deposits to your account. And MTN to XENO is 0 rated, so you don't have to wait for the next time you're visiting the bank to make a transaction. You can actually use your MTN number to actually automate these savings using the autosave for each goal. However, you can just say, every time I send in money, you go into your settings button and give us that distribution. For my goal, which is building wealth, that's my personal goal. I'm making money, not only to take care of my children, but I also have to take care of myself. So you say my goal, please invest 40%. Every time I make a deposit, 40% goes to my personal goal. And then the remaining 60%, you decide how you want to distribute it, depending on how much each child's plan is going to cost you. So every time you deposit, we can either go by the distribution, or you can invest for these goals independently whenever you get money, or you can automate using MTN. But that, if you're using MTN, then it has to be per goal. So you decide how much you want to be depositing. So you're able to run multiple goals within one XENO account. You don't have to open multiple accounts. No. If it's me, Sharon, and I have 6 goals, for example, I'm crazy like that, David. I have more than 6 goals, I think. So 2 for the children, and that's for education. Then I have to have 1 for retirement, 1 for travel and holidays. I like to travel, so I make sure I put money aside for that. So you can have multiple goals, and you're able to invest for all these goals at the same time.
All right. John, there's a question here for you. Someone is saying, how do you plan for fees increments? A school I attended, I think they said it was 400,000 shillings for 10 years. It was 40,000 shillings 10 years ago, and now it's 1.2 million shillings. So in 10 years, it has grown about 300%, right? How do you plan for that, John? And how do you account for that in the plans that you're making?
So, so the basic idea, because that's basically inflation. So that question could apply to rent, it could apply to fuel. Generally, the living costs have really gone up, and more so with education, it has really gone up. So the first thing to do, of course, is once you have your plan, and then you automate the regular deposit to that fund, then you need to figure out a way to gradually increase the amount you're depositing, either per month. We calculated it was about 325K.
Yeah.
So is it possible that, okay, this month I do 325, the next month I do 350, the next month I do 375. Now, at some point, you may eat away all the money you have. So at some point, we need to have a discussion about how do we increase our earning potential, our earning power, so that the proportion of money we are saving actually also goes up beyond inflation.
Yeah.
And really the basic way to increase earnings is to increase the value you're offering the world. And you increase the value you're offering the world by increasing the skills and knowledge you have. Like I said, I started as an engineer. I'm now an accountant. So you can change careers if you're employed. You can change employer. You can go into business for yourself. The money engineer started as a side hustle, but now I'm here on this call, and I've made some money from this side gig. So there are ways to increase your income away from the salary, which may be static. But even within your company, there are people who are earning much more. The question is, why are these people earning much, much more? In one of the companies I worked with, Umeme, there was a guy who used to serve us tea, and he would clean the office. I wouldn't interact with him much. So he would come in the morning, he serves you tea, he cleans the office. Then recently I went to one of the branches and I met the guy. The guy was attending to customers. So he told me a story. While he was cleaning and serving tea, he was using those little earnings to go back to school. He was actually studying a degree at Makerere. And eventually, because of his good rapport in the organization, he eventually talked to the HR managers. And when he finished the degree, there was an opening for a customer rep. And through that humility, the guy now earns much more compared to what he has. So there are ways to increase our earnings. Yes, the cost of living is going up, but there are people in this town making 100 million per month. The question, and legitimately, the question is, what are they doing? What are they doing differently? And the underlying denominator really is the skills and the value you're bringing to the marketplace. Each of us has been uniquely gifted, and I think that is something we can all do.
Okay. Sharon, this one goes to you. It's coming in from Yona. Says, in a scenario where my kid gets a scholarship and I don't need to pay fees anymore, can XENO pay that money back? Can he just give me my money and I pay my legoga?
Hi, Yona. Let me just break it to you that even when you're investing for your child's education with XENO, it's your money. The child benefits when you withdraw this money. Like, for example, even if you're saving for education and your child gets a scholarship and you want to change and divert this money into buying them a car, you're free to withdraw this money anytime. Like, all monies that come to us belong to the client. That money belongs to you, Yona. So if you've saved, let's say, 20 million shillings for education, and you end up having a very brilliant child who is topping his class every term, and you end up not paying school fees for 5 years, you can decide to choose what you want to use that money for. You could choose and rename that goal retirement. So then you have this money going into your retirement account and not your child's education's account. So even if you have a goal and it's education and you find yourself wanting to divert this money into something else, you're free to withdraw this money anytime when you need it. So it's your money, your instructions to us. We will honor your instructions and pay it out.
All right. So we have just about maybe 15, 20 minutes left on this call, and time really does fly when there's quite a bit of stuff to learn. But we are going to make the best use of those minutes. So please just drop your questions. We'll be more than glad to get to as many of them as we possibly can. And of course, at the end of the call, please do not leave the call before giving us some feedback. And this allows us to learn from you and prepare better for future webinars. All right. So there'll be a link that will be dropped in the chat, and you'll be able to just give us some feedback there. All right. So there's another question. There are a couple of questions for you here, Sharon, that we're just going to run through really quickly. Anne-Marie is asking, can I open a joint XENO account with my spouse?
The answer is yes. You can open with your spouse. You can choose to also open a family account and invest with your family, so you don't have to invest alone. If you find that investment is being a problem in your family, encourage your family to come together, set up a family account under the XENO platform, and you're able to go ahead and invest mommy, daddy, siblings, or mommy, daddy, and the children. You set up a family account and you're good to go. So you can do joint or family. So yes, you can invest with other people. You can invest with a partner, yeah.
All right. Someone is also asking, is there a way I can add a beneficiary to my account in case of death?
Yes, there is. The only challenge that we have currently is on USSD, which is, should you set up your account on MTN, we haven't put that feature there, but I know it's in the pipeline, it's in the works. So soon, even with your MTN *165, you'll be able to elect a beneficiary. On your XENO dashboard, you're able to add beneficiaries. Just head to the settings button, and that settings button is where you see your face, upper right corner of the dashboard. Click on your name, it will give you a drop down, select settings, you're able to update your beneficiaries. And with us, you're able to have more than one beneficiary. You can even go ahead and give us an allocation of how much you want each of these beneficiaries to earn. For example, you have 3 or 4 children and you would want them to be your beneficiaries. In the case or in the event that you pass on, how does XENO distribute? You're able to give us percentages. Out of 100, give X to this one, X to this one. We're able to honor that beneficiaries instruction that you've given us as per the percentages. So you're able to elect a beneficiary, and we encourage most of our customers to do that, because if you pass on and you've not elected a beneficiary, yes, they can access the funds, but that's if there is whoever is going to become your administrator for the estate, that's the person we pay to, but you can actually elect a beneficiary so that in case of death, we pay out to the people that you've asked us to pay to. So it's like a will. You give us your will and says, in case of death, I want to give Amy 50%, Eliana 50%, or because my children are young, I'm going to elect an older person. Let me elect my sister to be my beneficiary. And then that person is the person that XENO will pay to that money in case you pass on.
All right. Another question for you. How can someone open up an account while outside Uganda? And maybe how is they ask what's the percentage profit on the investment? And I know that's a complicated question to answer, especially with unit trust funds, but maybe as best as you can. So how does someone open an account from outside the country?
We've built a platform, myxeno.com. That's www.myxeno.com. And from wherever you are, provided you have a national ID, a Ugandan national ID, if you're not a Ugandan, at least have a valid government issued ID of that particular country where you are, that's passport, driving license, you're able to set up an account. You don't have to physically be here. We have so many clients in the diaspora that are investing with XENO. The only catch here is if you are an international client, you pay for the international wire transfer fees. That's not footed by XENO. But if you're local here, if you have a local bank account, deposits from XENO back to you, if you're withdrawing, it's zero charge. That charge is on us as XENO, but for clients that are abroad, Japan, US, Australia, name it. For the wire transfer that comes to you, that cost is incurred by the client, but you're able to set up an account, provided you're able to send money to our custodian bank. And we've partnered with Stanbic Bank together with Centenary Bank. So we have two. We have a collections account with Centenary Bank, and we have Stanbic Bank as our main custodian bank. So from wherever you are, provided money hits that account, with proper narrations, we find clients that go ahead, make a deposit, because all of you invest on one account. So it's always good for you to quote your goal number or account number with your name on it. If you don't have that space to fill that out, at least send us a proof of deposit via our uganda@myxeno.com, where we are able to now say, okay, this is David's money. So you can open an account. In terms of performance, the performance is dependent on where you've invested. We have 4 funds. We have money market, we have bonds, we have domestic equities, regional equities. Some of these assets are high risk, high return, and those are the equities. So they are volatile. Sometimes they can give you negative yields, and they can give you very good, sweet, positive yields sometimes. So equities are usually for long-term investors. Money market average is about 11%. The bond fund is about 15%, but these rates keep changing. These rates are not fixed rates because we get money on a daily basis. People are investing on a daily basis. And because you're investing in a fund that has invested in multiple securities, let's say the bond fund has invested in different securities, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20. We invest in Kenya, we go as high as 30 years. So with all these bonds, you have a cocktail of bonds. So the average yield of the fund every day, that yield, every participating investor that is in your own units, and those units are increased by how much you've invested, and the return is distributed across all the investors on a daily basis. So the return is dependent on how you've mixed your assets. At XENO, we use risk tolerance, 1 to 10, 1 being very conservative, and those are people that are investing in debt securities, and in there you're looking at things like treasury bills and bonds, fixed deposits, low risk. But that doesn't mean that there is no risk. There's a risk of default. There's a risk of should government fail to pay, should banks fail to pay. but it's very minimal. So at least you know that it's low risk. Low risk gives you a bit of assurance. You even know how much you're going to earn at the point when you're making the investment. We have at least, we know how we've invested because the rate is already fixed at the point you're investing. But with equities, they are volatile. Sometimes they are in positive, sometimes they're in negatives. But over the long term, equities actually are very good. They are very good investments for people that are looking for 5 years and above, not for someone investing for a short period. Yeah.
Okay, so someone asks, do I lose anything when I change my goal? Like if my goal was fund education and I change that to build wealth, do I lose some interest, or are there any charges for this transfer?
So it really depends on how your portfolio is structured. If you have equities, and I'll take the current, what is happening now. Of course, equities, we've seen the Nairobi Stock Exchange, majority of those stocks have been dropping in price. So that means the value has dropped. So if you are exiting at a point when there is what we call a paper loss, you only realize it when you exit, okay? So we typically tell customers, if you have a high risk investment, you have equities in your mix and you're moving money from this high risk investment that is exposed to equities, and these equities have performed in a negative at that particular time. Let's say you have a negative 10,000 shillings, okay? Should you exit at that point, you're going to realize that loss. So we typically tell customers, we can adjust the portfolio to a conservative one going forward with new money as we wait for the equities to gain back and for you to break even, at least not to lose that 10,000. Some clients are very stubborn, but you know, the client is the boss, you know, they call the last shot. We give the advice, we say, please hold on, wait a bit. Some listen, others are like, no, I don't want to see any losses on my account. But, you know, investments is taking risk, you know. So it's not like you're going to be in a negative forever. It happens. And actually, when these negatives happen, it's the right time for you to invest more money because it's cheap at that point. Pick them when the negatives happen, invest more money. And when the positives happen, that's the time to move and maybe go a bit conservative. So I don't know if I've answered that, David.
Yeah. I think, I mean, you've answered a question, but I think what she was asking is, if for example, my child gets a scholarship and I'm changing my goals from fund education to build wealth, do they lose any money in that process?
They don't lose money. I was only explaining at the point, if his investment had a negative yield on equities and they were moving, at that point, they would lose value. But let's take a perfect example. You have all your money intact, it's yielding well, and you want to move. There are no charges to move from one fund to the other, or changing money from one goal to the other goal. And actually what you do at that point, you don't even need to change goals. Just go and rename the goal. If it's education, rename it retirement, rename it travel.
All right.
You just change the name.
Okay, Magdalene is asking, after seeing things that are happening in Sudan, in Ukraine, the Turkey earthquake, and watching people live with only the clothes on their backs, can I access the money outside Uganda in case, God forbid, something like that happens? Is it possible to access my money outside the country?
Yes, you can.
All right. I think that's the same way the point the diaspora are able to ask that. And I think the second last question I'll be asking, in case no other questions come through. Someone asked, if I pass on and the beneficiaries pass on to, let's say, an accident, what happens to my investment?
Whoever has the letters of administration for the estate will have access to the money.
All right. And I'm just going to go to John with this one as we start to wrap this conversation up. Someone says, I plan to have kids, in 5 years. What advice would you give someone planning to become a young parent to have money set aside by then?
I think the basic advice is don't wait to have the kids and then start saving up. I think you need to start now, because the earlier you start, the more the fund grows. So if I were you, I would create a fund and then gradually save towards that future need, which will eventually manifest The problem is we usually first wait to see the kid before we start running around with the kid. So the idea is start now. If you're just out of school, start saving and investing now, because it really makes a big difference. The longer you save and invest, the more that compound interest really goes up.
All right. And just before I come to your closing remarks, John and Sharon, just some questions are coming in that, I feel we have a few more minutes that we can, be able to handle. Someone asks, what's the cost of investing through XENO? Yeah, what do I lose in terms of cost of investing through XENO?
So for the 4 funds we have at XENO, you can, if you're invested in, let's say, money markets, we charge 1.5% on the money market fund. That's our short-term fund for people that are investing for less than 1 year. It provides a very unique role, which is liquidity. So for clients that need money within the year, money markets, 1.5% per annum. Our bond fund and the equity funds is 2%. But at XENO, we don't believe in investing in just one fund. We encourage people to do diversification. So you need liquidity, that's money markets. You need security, that's the bond fund. For growth, you need equities. But we don't force clients to have equities if they don't want to. But let's say the client is a conservative person and they're investing in bonds and money markets, you'd find that they're investing 80% in bonds. So that 80% is charged 2% per annum. And then the remaining 20% invested in the money market fund, we go ahead and charge 1.5. So we don't do this for free. We charge a very small fee. So if you add up the money market and bonds, you're paying under 2%, which can come to close to maybe 1.8% per annum.
All right. That's
conservative. For a conservative client.
Seems like little money. Bruce is asking, what's the minimum amount someone can invest?
10K. 10,000 shillings. $3.
Right.
Yeah. 2 beers.
You're about to break it down into sticks of meat. But anyhow, if someone else asks, is it possible to switch my goal? For example, it was 1 year. Now I want to move it to 5 years. Is it possible to make that adjustment?
Very much. Not only years. You can start conservative when you're testing us out, because I see someone online that I signed up today. I'll leave their names to myself. And their goal is short term. It's an emergencies goal, okay? So you can choose to say, I'm conservative now. Because you're new and you're just starting this relationship, you don't want to take risk with XENO. You start with the risk tolerance 1. After 6 months, you can switch that conservative to high risk. You're able to go ahead and add equities in your fund. So we give you the power to personalize your goals. You give a say where this money is invested. So you can not only can you change the years from 5 to 3 or from 3 to 10, but you can actually increase or reduce your risk appetite, and also have a say on the mix of assets that we are investing for you. So if you're doing bonds and money markets, after 6 months, you're like, wow, I've been with XENO for the last 6 months. I think I can trust the team to make decisions for me on which stocks and equities to invest in. I've looked at their fact sheets for the last 5 years. I think I'm impressed with how they select these different equities that they're investing in. Then you can actually go ahead and switch up from maybe a 1 to a 3, from a 3 to a 4, or from a 8. You say, no, I think now I need to reduce my risk. I'm almost spending this money. Then you take it down from an 8 to a 1. So those that have been on the platform may find it familiar, but we have an investment planner that you can actually use to test your risk appetite, return versus risk, and maybe versus the time horizon you're investing for. So you can do all that.
And the last question I'm going to be asking before we get your closing remarks. Someone said, I saw that at a recent AGM, XENO is exploring an international fund beyond the regional fund. Is this still in the pipeline?
We're still cooking. We're still cooking, yeah. It goes through very rigorous processes. Yeah, we're planning to merge our domestic equities to the regional equities. We want to have an East African fund because of our experience for the last 5 years we've been in the market. We feel that having a pure domestic equities fund is not giving clients the desired outcomes. So we are responding to that. So that gives you the assurance that XENO that just doesn't make decisions on their own. We listen to clients, we look at the markets, we see what's happening. So we'll be merging the domestic equities to regional equities, and that's almost in its final stages. We hope maybe by mid-year that should be up and running. I'm not saying it has to happen, but I'm hoping by mid-year, by June, at least let's have domestic equities merged with regional equities. And then once that is done, then we are planning to launch an international fund that is going to give access to our clients to invest in stocks that are over and beyond the continent. I don't want to start giving them what is happening. We are still cooking, but something is coming up. So you have access to international stocks, yes.
Well, all right. Well, thank you so much for everyone who has been part of the call. We're coming to the end, but don't forget that we value your feedback, and there will be a feedback form that's going to be shared in the chat. Please feel free to just let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, how we can improve these calls, how we can make them more valuable to you. We're always looking forward to that. And as we wind down, I think I'll start with John, and I'll end with you, Sharon. John, do you have any final remarks for parents who are trying to wade the challenge, I will call it, that is school fees, and how they can cope with it?
Thank you, David. This has been quite insightful. I've actually just been reviewing some of my goals on XENO and adjusting them so that, as Sharon was speaking right now, I need to make some changes. But yeah, so education in a nutshell is one of the biggest costs. And the thing about money is you plan. You plan through budgeting, envisioning the future, and then you try to live within your means as much as you can. Create an education fund. You can use XENO. You can use other tools. Then find a system of regular savings towards that fund, so that school fees, you don't have to go every new term, go for overnight for school fees. If you have some money in an education fund, yeah, Jesus will be happy with you that you have some money, and he will help you to pay your fees much better. I talked about alternative education just briefly. There are people doing homeschool right now, and it's working for them. You can try online school as well. You can try vocational school, especially at S4, S6. It's also an option, vocational school. You can try various forms of apprenticeship. And these days, there are very many holiday packages. And also, don't just go for school, which is purely academic. Look at the vocational programs. You look at the co-curricular skills. And but just to end with this, that generally, how do you fund your education? You can fund it through your current income. You can increase that current income by adding the value you're bringing to the marketplace. You can build passive income. We talked about that education fund. Sharon mentioned the bonds, the equities, the real estate, and business as well. You can also look at scholarships. Personally, from senior 1 up to campus, I've never paid a single shilling in my life. I was always on a school bursary program. So I made sure I negotiated, though I was always among the best students to get those bursaries. So the last time my parents paid school fees was in primary. So there are many, there's MasterCard Foundation and many others. And when things are tight, you can look at bridge financing. There are short-term loans and things like that, but I wouldn't really recommend them. Those are like last resort. Thank you, David, for this opportunity.
All right. If you're looking to get in touch with John, you can check him out on Twitter, John_Ntende. You can just drop him a DM. I don't know if he responds to his DMs, but you can just mention him in a tweet and you'll be able to catch him. This is probably the only time you'll catch him for free. The next time his advice might come with a bit of shillings at the top. But also you can read his blog, which has a lot of insightful content at themoneyengineers.com. All right, you can just go and catch that and be able to catch up with all the nuggets that he shares there. Sharon, any final comments?
Hey, my final comments to fellow parents. Let's look at the location of our schools where we take our children, because location is very key. It will determine the cost of transport. We need to make sure that as we plan for these children, we shouldn't forget ourselves who make the money. These children are we're supposed to take care of them, but let's not forget ourselves. We need to automate our savings, have a routine on how you're planning. So don't just plan, but automate and ensure that on a monthly basis, you're putting something aside for education, no matter how small it is. Like I said, could be as little as 50,000 every month. You never know how much that money can grow up by than waiting until when it's too late. Let's go for affordable schools. The child is going to a very expensive school and probably the father has lost a job or one of you is not doing well financially. Please feel free to downsize. Let's take kids to schools that we can afford. I'm a testament to that myself. Amy was in a very posh school before Eliana came into play. Immediately Eliana came into play, we had to downsize. And downsizing means I want at least an average education for both of them. I can't afford the model school, anymore because it's not one child. So every time you have all these expenses, downsize, don't feel ashamed, get schools that are closer to home if possible. Look around for a school that has quality education within home, because every time you transport these kids to kilometers, 20 kilometers away from home, that journey alone distorts how they think or how they concentrate in school. So let's look around home, get a school that is affordable, where your child can get quality education and save some more money for later, because you don't know whether you're going to have that job forever. You could be able to afford an international school now for the next 2 years. What if something happened? Will you be able to go ahead and afford it? Unless you have really enough savings that can maybe pay that child's education for the next 3 or 4 years, then please go ahead. But if you're struggling to pay school fees in a very expensive school, feel free to downsize to a normal school. Then whatever you would have paid the other side, invest it for later, or invest it for that child's maybe university or secondary, because someone would say, I don't have money to save because everything I earn, I'm spending. Are there schools that you can get that maybe the school is not 800,000, it's actually 500, but it will give you the same quality of education as the one that you're paying for 900. That 400,000 shillings, put it aside for school fees, maybe in secondary school. That's maybe a tip. And then let's plan together. It's not just the father to plan for education. Parents as mothers also have to play a very critical role. Should the father lose their job, what next? So as mothers, we also have to be very involved in planning for our children's education. If it's the husband, maybe doing an insurance policy, can you do a XENO policy for your children? If you're doing a XENO policy as a mom, in case daddy doesn't have the money, can mom be able to come and chip in there? So it should be for the two parents. Don't just leave it for one person. It's better for you to at least have, just in case something happened. Because we've seen when dads go away, parents are like, now food day, what do I have to do? Yet you should have done something. And lastly, let's stay away from schools that are expensive, that keep us in debt. Let's try and go to affordable schools that we can afford and live with a peace of mind. You'd rather have a peace of mind than that money lender being on your case and taking your property because you had to take a child to an expensive school.
Well, thank you very much, Sharon. Thank you very much, John, for your time and for your advice. Don't forget that these webinars happen every month, so there'll be another one in the month of May. And of course, a big thank you to everyone who has taken the time off to join this and have these conversations. Yes, Joshua, we shall have more of these calls often, and we shall be having them at least once a month for now. Don't forget to please share your feedback in our feedback form. It has been dropped in the comments. We're always looking forward to hearing from you, to knowing how we can be better. XENO is a people-centric company, and therefore we're always just trying to figure out how we can build better for you. So you can give us feedback there, or you can go into our Twitter, that's XENO Uganda. We're always responsive over there. You can go into our Instagram at XENO Investments. You can visit the website myxeno.com and check out what we do, or book a one-on-one session with an advisor. And if you're looking to learn more about who XENO is and why we insist on goal-based investment, we have a very nifty area of our website that says learn. You can just go click that link, and you'll be able to just get all these tools and all this content that our team has been able to write and share with you. Someone asked in the comments, will they be able to listen to this after they joined late? Yes, these calls are recorded, and we're able to provide you a recorded version of the call that you can watch a bit later. But from all of us here at XENO, thank you so much for taking the time. And we hope that you've learned a lot. We hope that you'll be visiting myxeno.com to set up an education goal for your child or for your children. And we hope that, when we come back to this in a few months, that we'll be hearing more and more testimonies of people who have been able to afford their children's education. That poll that we have will have reduced. Yes.
Sorry. I just wanted to share. XENO has this amazing tool. I don't think you can see it clearly. I was trying to show you my autosave. I think I was among the first clients to sign up. The moment I saw it on Twitter, I immediately, because there's a book I read, The Automatic Millionaire by a guy called David Ogutu. And the one simple thing you can do to win with money is to find a way of automating the saving and investment decision. So I've been scouting the market, trying to look for a simple solution to save some little money consistently. And when XENO announced that you could save automatically from mobile money to the unit trust, I immediately signed up a daily autosave of 10K. And trust me, I have over 3 million shillings just by that little decision to use autosave. So I forced my wife to get onto it. I forced my colleagues to get onto it. And no one regrets that decision. And you can save for a day, you can save per week. It's really one of the easiest things you can do right now. Saving 3 million for school fees is hard. Saving 10K, the decision is much, much, much easier. Thank you.
And a lot less painful. Well, thank you very much, John, for your time, and thank you everyone who joined us on the call. It's always a pleasure. That is our time, and let us do this again next month. But again, as I mentioned, you can always catch us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. You can ask your questions. Our team of advisors will always be on hand to be able to answer those questions from myself and the entire team that puts this together. Goodbye. Have yourselves a fabulous night, and let us start goals. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone, and have a lovely evening.